Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and people. This is Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. I'm joined by two special guests. Well, everyone's a special guest because they take time to join me on their show. I'm joined by Dr. Sally Lorentson and Dr. Adrienne White. And I did the focus on the doctor because these amazing women are doing big things in education, and hopefully someday I can join them in that title. We're going to be talking about reimagining college. We all, surprise, surprise, I work at George Mason University. I'm surrounded by such intellectual capital, such smart people. And so I love to just pick their brain about the very variety of things that they're doing here at the university. So, Dr. Lorentson, go ahead and give a little brief intro about who you are.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us today. It's wonderful to chat with you and to work with you on campus on making change for the sake of students. So my name is Sally Lorentson. I use she, her pronouns, and I get to work at George Mason. I've been here for almost 12 years, working to reimagine what students experience every day in college and leading a team to really focus on student success and how we break down systems that often were constructed for students who aren't the students we have in college today, and figure out how to build them anew so that students can find success no matter who they are in this environment.
I love it. And Dr. Adrienne White, go ahead and introduce yourself.
That's a tough one to follow, Dr. Lorentson. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Adrienne White. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Student Success Coaching at George Mason University. I've been working here for a little bit over 7.5 years. And during that time, I've had the opportunity to create new and innovative ways for Mason to be able to support our students. Over the last 3.5 years, I've been developing the Student Success Coaching program at Mason to support our incoming first-year students. So that includes our freshmen and transfer students, but also providing access to all students at George Mason to help support them through defining what success means to them and helping to support them throughout their journey at Mason. So I'm very excited to be here.
I love it. And, one of the things I love to learn, especially when I have my guests, is like their origin story, because I feel like their background has kind of led them to this work. So maybe both of y'all take turns. Maybe talk about your college experience, and was there anything in your college experience, not like if you go back in a crystal ball, that relates to the work you're doing? Like, wow, I wish there was a place for me as a transfer, or I wish there was a place for me as I transition. So, can you speak to that? I'll go with Sally first.
Sure. So I went to college about 1,000 miles from home. I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and went to college in Southern California, and couldn't have been more excited to get out of my family's home, though I love my family. And as I did that, I lived on campus, and many students, as they do, meet brand new people. You don't necessarily live with someone you know. And I lived with some roommates who had a really different life than mine and made choices that resulted in, police in my room and other things happening in the first 6 weeks of college that were really unexpected for me. And so, I went home at Thanksgiving and wanted to transfer to a different college near my family. And my family asked me to stick it out and see if I could navigate the problems that were occurring. And through that process, I connected with student affairs professionals. And so, in doing that, I got engaged with a lot of people on campus. I took on typical traditional student leader roles like student government and being an RA and an orientation leader. And in the midst of all of that, I learned, one, how important those people can be in supporting transitions into and through college. Those people are still some of my mentors today, amazing human beings who have supported me throughout my career. And I really, through that process, had the opportunity to intern with our vice president of the institution. And in doing that, he really said to me, I know you want to be a teacher. You can actually be a teacher that isn't a teacher title and do this work of student affairs in ways that really can change the world for people. And you should think about that. And of course, here I am, completing my degree, having this conversation going, I just earned a degree in English. What are you talking about? I'm going to go be a teacher. And, that was a really pivotal moment for me, because someone not just had provided me with support, to be able to succeed in college, but then had specifically said, actually, you're really good at something that you didn't necessarily know you would be. And you should really think about whether that's the path you want to be on. And so that's really how I got my start in student affairs. And, being a logical person, I decided I'd pursue a master's degree in whichever thing would pay me to be able to do my master's. And student affairs is much better set up for that, unfortunately, than teaching. Good for student affairs, bad for teaching. There aren't very many paid master's programs in teaching. And so student affairs became that kind of path, and I thought I'd stay on it for a little while, and here we are almost 20 years later, and I'm still doing that work, and I still love it, and it's the reason I come to work every day, is to help students find that same ability to succeed no matter the environment every day.
I love it. Thank you. That's a great origin story.
That is a great origin story. Mine's a little different. I'm a DMV local, so one of the few in this area that grew up here. I grew up in Falls Church, which in the city of Falls Church, it's a small town. It's 2 square miles, but you're in the middle of the, Northern Virginia, Maryland, DC area. And so I knew that I needed to escape, because I had been going to school with the same people my entire life. And if I went to school in Virginia, I would kind of stick with those old patterns of staying with the people I know and not exploring new things. So for me, it was really important to leave the state of Virginia. So I ended up at the University of Tennessee, which not that much further outside of Virginia, but far enough away that, I was really the only person from my high school that went there. And for me, that was a really eye-opening experience, because Knoxville is very different from Northern Virginia. And for me, while I had a wonderful college experience, I was also, involved in everything, to the point where my best friend was like, you need to stop signing up for things, which is something my mom's been telling me my entire life. So, I just continue with that theme. But I think it was also really alienating at the same time, because I was at a predominantly white institution. I grew up in a predominantly white area. And so for me, being a Black woman, there were times where I was uncomfortable, and I didn't have a support system to help me through that. I didn't have the mentor, in student affairs to say, hey, this is a great idea for you, right? I've had to basically forge my own path. And while my parents both have, their JDs, they had very different college experiences than I did, right? My mom worked her way through college, through law school, right? She did all of that by herself. So she didn't have the traditional college experience like I was trying to have. So I really didn't have anybody who'd been through it to talk about, what do I do? What are my challenges? Which is, so deeply connected to the work that I'm doing today. I knew I could go into student affairs by the time I was ready to graduate from college, but I didn't want to be like everybody else that I was associating with, and I wanted to do something different. So I actually ended up in sales. I was a pharmaceutical rep for several years. And then I was looking at the field, looking at the industry, thinking, what am I doing? All the people who'd been in the industry for years were like, get out while you can. So I'm the youngest person on the team, and they're telling me to get out. So it makes you think about, your life a little bit. It makes you think about what you're doing and what your purpose is. And so I decided to go, back to school to get my master's degree at Indiana University. And I'm truly grateful that I did, because it's completely changed my life. And working at schools like Mason and like VCU and seeing the diverse population of students, I can never go back to an experience other than a school with a diverse population, right? I look at our students and I see the connections that they're making, and I'm thinking, man, I wish I had that opportunity in college. On top of that, I also wish I had somebody to help me through this process. And so I think that's, it's near and dear to me, the work that we're doing in my unit in particular, and at Mason as an institution, because we're creating these experiences of belonging. We're creating these experiences of getting connected with people that care about you. And most importantly, we're creating experiences that help students get to the finish line and then set them up for success in their next step after Mason.
I love it. Shout out to VCU. Quick plug, Adrienne knows my sister because she was a resident director, I believe, and my sister was an RA, so
Yep.
small world.
Hey,
She's
Lois.
she was like, Wilkerson, do you know Lois? I was like, that's my sister. So reimagining the college experience, I think, it's without, if you're a real historian or know, the origins of college did not look like this. If we go back to whatever, the 1700s, whatever, it was meant for rich, elite, white men to go to school. I don't think that when they looked at a crystal ball, they imagined that it wouldn't stay for rich, elite white men. So when you hear about the origin story of the universities, what comes to mind? Like, does that come in your mind? Like we're kind of combating a system that was in existence for a very long time, and that that's changed the landscape of education.
Absolutely. I mean, none of this was set up for any of us that are sitting in this room, right?
Yeah.
And as barriers have come down in kind of national ways or specific to campuses, it's really important that we figure out higher ed is not as coordinated as we might think, right? In different states, you've got different systems. Some are very structured, and so if something happens, it happens for the entire system. Others are much more fragmented. And nationally, we have very limited kind of influence over higher education. And so when you choose a population, let's choose transfer students, for example. Institutions were not set up for transfer students, right? Even when community colleges were born, they were intended only to get people to that first degree, right, of the associate's degree, or to get a technical degree, or to give a very specific skill. They weren't intended to be a pathway toward a bachelor's degree and beyond. And so we as four-year institutions were also not necessarily set up to receive those students. We were set up for a traditional structure. And so the work that we do every day, while there's specific student services being delivered in everything we do, is really figuring out how do we take something as simple as an orientation, for example, and say, this wasn't built for a transfer student. So what needs to look different now that at Mason, for example, more than half of our new undergraduates are transfer students? This wasn't built for someone who's 30 and has two small children. How do we change that? And those enhancements, they really are enhancements that often serve the entirety of the population. One of the things I talk about with my team is when we look at the playing field, where are the places that we can smooth out for everybody, right? By making the road smoother, everybody benefits. And where are the places where there are enormous potholes for specific populations that I might know how to dodge, but you don't? That we need to be intentional about finding places that we can fill those so that you don't fall in that pothole. And that has been really a way to decide how do we serve all of our students at Mason, right? One of our vision in our division is every student succeeds. That means every student. And so for many of them, the systems are already built to support them. But where are the places that we need to change, whether in small ways or in radical ways, to be able to ensure that every student has that opportunity and we're walking alongside them in that path?
I love that. I was thinking about that too, because I grew up in this area, similar to Adrienne, and it used to be the landscape. I think Mason used to be considered like a safety school or a commuter school. Or you didn't get into X, Y, UVA, whatever, you're going to Mason, and it was kind of looked down on.
Yes.
Back in 03, so I'll date myself. But also the community college was viewed as that too, like, you didn't,
Absolutely.
your grades weren't good enough, or you didn't, you're poor or whatever, you're going to go to community college. But now we're reframing it. We're even seeing upper middle class students saying, I need to save some money regardless. I got money, but I want to save it. So even the landscape and the enrollment of the community college has changed, and that system has changed. And then parents are definitely saying, you're going to save me money for 2 years because I want you to transfer to the 4-year institution. And I think it wasn't, not say original, like you said, built like that. And I think now it is. It's almost like assumed. Parents like, you go to that 2-year to go to a 4-year, and make sure it's as smooth as you can. Like you make sure that when you get to Nova, you're taking every class that's going to give you, credits at Mason all the way through. We want to make sure that you go all the way from community college to that. So what resonates with you for that whole system and this is reworked and what Sally just said?
Yeah, I mean, actually what you just said, right? Options, right? Mm-hmm. I don't feel like we had many options mm-hmm. growing up, right? For me, it was, you're going to college, and mm-hmm. that meant a four-year institution, mm-hmm. right? The end. And, I look back at people that I've known for 20 plus years, and I'm thinking, man, their life could have been totally changed if they had an option to go to community college. They had an option to go to technical school, but also the key is knowing about those options, right? And I think that starts before you even get to college. And there's so many systems that need to be dismantled in education, period. Mm-hmm. I think we can all agree about that. But I mean, I think there's clearly a racial divide, right? This college was not set up for Black people or people of color. It just wasn't. And I think about that, and it's not just internally, it's external factors that influence these barriers as well. I think about my mother, right? I talked about how she just, paid her way through college. Well, she didn't even have support from her family. It was, yeah. You're crazy. You're going to law school. You're a Black woman. Black women, aren't lawyers, mm-hmm. right? That's the type of support that she was getting. Meanwhile, she was still pushing through, right? Having to do that is pretty amazing and pretty powerful when you hear about those stories. And it's sad that she went to law school in the 70s. It's 2022, and we still have the exact same issue mm-hmm. in a lot of our communities where college is not something that you just are supported in by all the communities. And I'm not saying that's, generalizable, but it is a very real barrier that I know a lot of our students are facing today. I've been meeting with students at Mason whose parents are not supportive of them pursuing a particular major.
Absolutely.
Right? Some students just don't have the say. And I think what Mason is doing, trying to empower students to advocate for themselves and for their needs, is something that I wish could be replicated across the institution. And I think we're setting a really strong model in how to support students to do that. Because I think the biggest hurdle that I'm seeing is just students either don't know or they need to feel empowered to take ownership over their own experiences.
I love that. So you spoke about that. It's like, I don't, because I know both of y'all are nationally known and they go to conferences and doing all those things and proposals. And so you get to see, I think, from your two experiences, the macro, right? You said national. So for that, not even research-wise, just when you went to a conference or whatever, what were some of the things where you're like, wow, we are doing really well here at Mason, and then, wow, we could do a little bit better? Because I think when I get to go to spaces outside myself and observe, I'm like, wow, we could take that back. Or on the other end, I'm like, on the low, we might think that we're not doing that well, but we're doing really well, and we need to give ourselves a pat on the back. And I've seen that because I've gotten outside of my bubble. So can you speak to that experience?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that. I think an example of this is through one of the knowledge communities that I created with NASPA. NASPA is one of our largest student affairs organization for professionals in the field. And a year and a half ago, a colleague of mine, Dr. Kevin Correa out in Arizona State, connected with me at NASPA and said, hey, I think we need a space for higher education professionals and in student success coaching to come together. Would you be interested in creating this community? And I was like, sure, let's do it. And fortunately, right, we were approved. We had to go through a whole proposal stage. But through that process, I've been able to connect with people from all over the country that work in success coaching. And what I'm seeing is Mason is light years ahead of a lot of institutions when it comes to supporting students through success coaching. A lot of institutions are still just getting us up and running, right? A lot of institutions are figuring out what this could look like, at their small institution or the large institution, right? There's a need for some expertise in that area in developing programs. And so I do notice that we are ahead of the game with that. And and the resources that get put into success coaching. I mean, that's a huge hurdle so many other professionals face is human resources, financial resources, and everything in between. Mason does an outstanding job of supporting this program because it's committed to supporting students throughout their entire time at Mason, right? I think that's pretty incredible. Where I see Mason, needing to either like step it up a little bit or, think through a little bit is how we connect with our academic partners, right? I see a lot of, not organizations, a lot of institutions that have a more seamless collaboration between success coaching and academic advising. And it's an integrated model, meaning they have coaches and advisors in the same space working together to support students. Easier to do that at smaller schools, I think.
Yeah.
Mason is a huge institution, highly decentralized.
Yes, ma'am.
But I don't think it's impossible, right? I don't think it's impossible for us to work more seamlessly together with our academic advisors on campus. And I would love to see us improve our relationships across the board, because I've seen how powerful that relationship can be because my colleagues are talking about it across higher education.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think the issues that you brought with success coaching and advising could be even brought macro to career services, because it's just a large institution, and if you choose to, you could be siloed and just stay in your lane and never like leave your office or leave your physical space, unless you're extroverted like myself and you're just all over the place. And then you meet people and then you learn, oh, that person does this, and then you have like a mini database to point guard people, which has been very helpful. Like, oh, I know, go see my man Kai, go see people, and how to point guard. But I think that's breaking down those silos.
Right. It's working together to support our students. And it's not just coaching and advising, right? You're right. It's coaching, advising, career services, all of university life, all of our academic units, enrollment management, right? It's the whole institution. Yeah. How are we working together and not, being territorial over who's going to support our students and who's going to support them the best? Why don't we all support them the best? Why don't we all support them together and help each other out? Because that's what we're all here to do. We're all here to help support our students. And I've seen so many institutions just have such strong relationships across the institution. And I think Mason is making great paths, and with doing that, I think I've seen over the last few years a lot of great strides made to build those relationships and partnerships. But I definitely think that's something where we can grow in.
100%. Growth mindset doesn't mean it's a problem.
Exactly.
So before we did a pre-interview, you Sally, you brought up the Mason Virginia Promise, and maybe that is an actual structure or system that we're working on to make this seamless transition. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure.
And how that is combating the issues that we brought, the systems that we talked about?
Absolutely. So this idea actually started with a partnership that Mason has with Northern Virginia Community College called Advance. And we started that almost 5 years ago now, which is amazing. And it was really intended to break down that pathway from the community college to the four-year institution. Many of our students lose credits in the transfer process, typically on average nationally 15 credits. You think about how much a credit costs.
That's a whole semester.
Along with how much time, exactly a semester, a student has invested, that's if they're full-time, in earning those credits. And the fact that they lose those when they come across the bridge into the four-year institution is both a financial and a time loss for them. Also, community college as an environment is really different than the four-year environment. And so students oftentimes hit walls when they arrive at the four-year institution or even trying to get to the four-year institution. My years working in orientation, we saw tons of students showing up to our orientation sessions who were transfer students thinking they'd earned a guaranteed admission agreement, for example, where they get all of their Mason course classes taken care of through what they've taken at the community college. Come to find out while they go into advising and registration that they actually didn't earn that because something changed, right? Not the student's fault, not necessarily the institution's fault, who are both trying to keep up with current trends in curriculum and what the industry expects of them, right, as far as who we produce as graduates. But somewhere in that mix, the student ultimately loses. And so we really wanted to smooth that out for students and help them navigate those systems. And so Advance was born really out of that idea in specific partnership with Northern Virginia Community College. Over 3,000 students have been in the program now, and I've lost track of how many have graduated from both institutions with both an associate's and a bachelor's degree, but it's growing close to 1,000, I believe. And that's amazing in the amount of time that we've spent on that program. And that's an example of someplace where also spending time with national partners. It's really amazing what we've done in 5 years. There are other states that are models for us. Florida has partnerships like this. Texas has partnerships like this. And when we talk with them, they've been doing this for 20 years, and oftentimes they're not as far down the path as we are. So it explains to me why we're all so tired who've been working on this program for these years, but also how amazing that is for our students that our institutions have together made that investment. And so now Mason, under the leadership of our university president, Gregory Washington, has really committed to doing this with more institutions, because while Nova is our primary feeder school for transfer students, about 3/4 of our transfers come from Nova. There are 23 other community colleges in the Commonwealth of Virginia who all have students who could benefit from this type of partnership. And so as part of the Mason Virginia Promise, we are in the process of building out those same partnerships, those same supports, those pathways, those curricular pathways, as well as that success coaching element with somebody who follows the student through their whole experience at both institutions as a primary path to a bachelor's degree for undergraduates across the state of Virginia. And that's a commitment Mason is making, that anyone who wants a degree has the opportunity to earn one through us. And that's a pretty amazing commitment when higher education really has been viewed as a privilege and not a right. And that can shift the narrative in our state, and we become a model for other states across the nation about how they think about their students and how they value them as people invested in this process. So I'm excited about what that can do here and elsewhere.
I love that, and you're bringing up a follow-up question, because I used to work at the Annandale campus as a transfer counselor for VCU, and I had to have those real sad conversations at the very end. We're like, oh, I'm so sorry, you didn't take this one science class for guaranteed admissions, and I could see their face just drop. Or I had to say no to certain programs because I think certain programs are very restrictive, like not everyone could be a nurse. Nursing has a separate application and all that. Did you notice with the 15 credits lost, were there certain programs that were harder or that more students lost credits on, like, for instance, the ones that want to go into the sciences or the ones that want to go into a STEM degree as opposed to a liberal arts? Did you notice that with your data, like there are certain majors were just difficult to make this agreement with?
So there are definitely majors that are still not a part of the program for a variety of reasons. And some of those you mentioned, nursing, for example, has a second gate. And there are really good reasons that exists, right? And there are also challenging reasons why that exists that are not why we're here today. But there are other programs where their curriculum is changing really quickly, right? You think about our engineering and our sciences, or even business. And the pace that the world is changing means also the pace of curriculum change is significant. And so a lot of lost credit is because of those changes that are happening so that we can keep up nationally with the expectations from accreditation and, from careers as far as where we are putting these students out into the world and making sure they've got what they need. But that was only part of it. Part of it really was the dynamic of faculty at different institutions and reading a syllabus and saying, well, that's not the textbook I would have used for this, and saying, therefore, it doesn't count for credit here. And what we were able to do through the advanced program and what we're working to do through the Mason Virginia Promise is bring faculty together, bring their syllabi and their textbooks and their course materials to the table and talk about the fact that, okay, in this course, transfer students from Nova are showing up underprepared. what can we do differently earlier in the pipeline to make sure, because if they're showing up underprepared here, they're probably also showing up underprepared elsewhere. What can we change in that part of the curriculum early in the process? And then what can we also change downstream, knowing that that's how students are coming to us? Just saying, well, students from the community college come to us underprepared.
Yeah, that's
right. That doesn't help.
Yeah.
In fact, it exacerbates the perceptions and the stereotypes about who community college students are, even if they're extremely high-performing, amazingly intelligent, driven people. And so that has been, I think, one of the golden nuggets that we weren't necessarily anticipating out of these partnerships, is bringing the faculty together. They do this on an annual basis. This isn't just a one-time thing we did when we built the program. And having them look at these things together, talk about the things that they're seeing in the classroom, and think about how they work together in partnership to really ensure that we can update the curriculum and still not have students lose credit because they happen to take that course 2 years ago when they were using this textbook and not that textbook. And I think that is just, it takes extra time, it takes extra energy, but our students win, right? And that's why we should be doing this.
Well, that's great, because I remember that too. That was always like this math class, and they took the wrong math class, or they took the wrong English composition, and then they were like, nope, you got to take that over again when you get to VCU. So it's good to know that I was on the ground as a foot soldier seeing it, but this is a national thing. Like, wow, this didn't make no sense. And I remember, this is one thing I do remember, is when I was at Nova, one of my colleagues that just did all transfer stuff had like a booklet, like a thick notebook, and then she had to go to tabs for individual schools and say, oh no, take this one, don't take this one. Are you sure you really want to go to UVA? And then they took this class, but they're like, I don't want to go to UVA no more. But because they followed this one for UVA, they're kind of short at Mason. It was nutty. I feel shout out to them.
Complicated.
Shout out to them. If I don't know if you know her, Jennifer Nelson. Shout out to you, Jen Nelson at Nova. She used to do that all the time. So I lied. This is at the end of the show as we come up. But I lied is about the organized part. It's called Shot for Shot. So this is a portion of the show where we get to ask each other random questions that have nothing to do with this. Now that we have three guests, I think we're going to do it in a triangle model. So Sally, you're going to ask the question that for me and Adrienne. I'm going to ask a question for you two, and then Adrienne asks for that. Who wants to go first? You want me to go first?
Yes, you go first.
Okay. So I love it. So earlier, Adrienne said she was the queen of doing too much in undergrad. So with that being said...
Or life.
For life, too.
And me too. Philip Wilkerson, I wrote that down as in same, doing a lot. And I put that in my notes. What was one of your favorite undergrad activities? That was my question for both of y'all. And why? The keyword is why.
Oh, this is such a tough question.
Yeah, especially because you did too much. That's why.
I did too much. But I think actually, I remember distinctly going to my first football game. In the SEC, football is life. You live, breathe, and die by football. And I did not know that upon going to Tennessee. So when I was like, oh yeah, I've never been to a football game, my friends were like, I'm sorry, what? Because they were all from Tennessee. And so I think going to the football games is definitely one of the most memorable things I will have ever done. And I wish, my little son, I'm going to take him, and I want him to experience those things too, because it's nothing like being in Knoxville on a game day.
I'm going to do a quick interjection. One, I'm so appalled that you didn't go to any Northern Virginia high school football game, which I'm not saying we have big ball like that.
I mean, we weren't that great.
Yeah.
So.
And two, I did go to a UGA Tennessee game one time, and it was next. I'd never seen football on that scale.
Yeah.
In Athens, it was crazy. All right, Sally, what was your favorite undergrad activity?
Well, so I had never been involved in something like student government before I went to college, and I actually ran to be a student senator, having no clue what that was, but because of the circumstances I mentioned earlier, needed to do something with my time that got me out of my residence hall room, and had an amazing time doing that. Really loved it. Did it for 4 years. Had the opportunity to lead the student government as a vice president. And then my senior year, I actually decided to take a step back and be a member of our programming board. And I did it because I just felt like I had too many things on my plate and wanted to be able to enjoy a little bit of my senior year of college. And also was having this crisis of what I'd be doing with my life based on the conversation we had earlier. And it was just doing something completely different. And so I planned events literally for every Friday night on the college campus or off campus for our students. And I was at a small private college. And so, we were in a small town with not a lot to do for college students. And so we were the thing on Friday nights. And being able to really build up that program and use a whole different set of skills to plan events that's very different than legislating what your fellow students are doing and how you use their student fees was just, it opened a whole new set of doors for me. And so that was a lot of fun. And through that, I got to do a lot of things. Like I said, I was in Southern California. And so, we got to plan our senior formal at Disneyland. And we got to take students. I have been to the Price is Right show more times than I can count.
Nice.
One of my friends has won lots of items on the Price is Right. Why they always choose her and not me, I don't know. But and go down and do filming for, some of the shows in LA and Hollywood. And, we got to do so many cool, different things that I think about, of course, here, would look different. They'd be in the nation's capital and whatever. But as, someone from the Pacific Northwest where, football is about the most exciting thing besides hiking the mountains that we have, that was just such a cool way to live out my senior year of college, doing that for my fellow students, but also getting to live those experiences myself.
That's great. All right, who wants to go next? I love that.
Okay, I can go. I've been trying to formulate a question. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your future self?
Future or past?
Past self.
I was about to say future. I was like,
see, this is why I can't come up with questions on the spot.
I was like past self. I was like future self.
Right.
Invest in something.
What
so I get some money.
advice would you give your past self, knowing what you know now?
Okay. I would say going back to my college self, I would honestly tell myself to go to career services earlier. I'm not gonna lie.
That's a
As
good
someone
one.
that works there, I only went there once my senior year to get my resume checked, and that was really it. And I would have told myself invest in it. And I've told people this multiple times, knowing that I have this love of media or whatever. I still would have been a history major. I would have never changed that, but I would have supplemented that with a minor or something that was skilled. Like for instance, at JMU we had a thing called SMAD, Media Arts and Design. And now I'm like playing catch up. I'm figuring out how to do this stuff on YouTube. But if I could have told myself, man, you like history, but maybe you would like to do the media part, like, a radio show or a podcast about history, or get a camera and figure out how to make documentaries. I definitely would have done that a lot sooner because I still liked history. I still like it now. But I would have gave myself a concrete skill, like a real like, besides my liberal arts and writing and all the skills you get from a liberal arts, I would have gave myself like a real technical skill set, like how to use a camera or how to do editing or something. So that'd have been my advice. That and go to career services more than once. I was like, what is it? I was one of those people that graduated, had to go back home with my parents and had no clue. And only reason why I got my first job out of college is because of my relationships. My best friend had a job and put me on, but I had no preparation, nothing. I'm here now. About you?
It's a good question. I think that I would allow myself a little more grace. I certainly am known for my high standards and have a level of excellence I expect of myself that I think in college, in particular, meant that I gave up on relationships and people in favor of making sure I made the grade or getting elected or, being the person who was doing X. And so, I think I would have given myself a little more grace there and am appreciative of friends who stuck with me through all of that. But I think that's also a skill that then I had to really hone as I went on in my career, as well as in my academic work. So figuring out how to navigate a master's program, a doc program, and not be at that level of excellence was crushing for myself, right? And so I wish I could have learned to give myself the grace that I sometimes do now a lot earlier in life, college, master's, career, all of it.
Shout out to the underachievers like myself. You know, it's like, if you pass, I pass. You know, I was telling someone the other day. This is a good conversation. I was telling someone we were commiserating over a PhD program, and you might be able to check me. I was like, I don't think anyone really looks at your transcripts for your PhD.
They sure do.
No.
There's like, do they look at your name saying Dr. X and so? Did you pass the class? Is your research good? Do you have good relationships with your professors? I think, you know, I say that all to say that, like, when I'm not going to get an A. I try to read that to myself, like, at least I'm cool with the professors. I got this, and this. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
But it's also true.
Okay,
right?
good. I'm giving myself good advice.
It is also true. Yes.
Okay, good.
No one has asked for my transcript since I
Ever.
applied for a job here.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they ask for your reference.
They sure do.
Yes, they
and they ask
absolutely
what
do.
you published or what's your expertise, right?
Yep.
All right. Sally, you will wrap us up with our last question, and then we're going to land this plane for this
All
podcast.
right. So I'm going totally off the track here
I love it.
because you said anything and anything we've talked
Everything.
about. So who is the football team that you root for in any league, on any level, no matter what? Go.
You want to go first? You
Yeah.
go first.
I mean, obviously, it's my Tennessee Volunteers. Ride or die. You're there in the bad times and the good times. And right now, we're having a great time, and I am all here for it.
I love it. I'm going to do a multifaceted answer because it's all over the place because I do have a college team. So shout out to the JMU Dukes. You know, they're good. I went to their national championship like 3-4 years ago in Dallas where they actually won that one against Youngstown. So that was a blast. My NFL team, I'm going to tell us, I've been saying this very blatantly. I am not a Commanders fan right now until Dan Snyder is no longer the owner.
Amen.
I will jump back on the bandwagon. You'll see me wear all the colors and all that. Go Commanders, you know, put your left hand up, all that stuff.
Yes.
Once he's gone. So right now, I'm just equally hating on everybody. I just literally just say everyone's trash and make fun of everybody. People will come up to me and say, Philip, you know, the Commanders are not good. I say, yes, they're not. You know, I don't care anymore. I have no allegiance until he's gone because I think as a man of my value set, I don't rock with that. But so that's it right now.
I support you.
And then luckily, Mason don't have a team, so I don't feel like. Well, they do have a club team, so shout out to them, and I do root for them, the club team. But I feel like there's no conflict of interest there because they'll never play JMU. I remember one time where Mason and Madison played each other in basketball, and I had to get a split jersey. I was so confused, but that will never come up in football, so I'm good about that. So those are NFL and that. So thank you for that question. You'll see, you'll see that though. I'm a man of my word. Once Dan Snyder's gone, which I believe is going to happen, maybe. You'll see me on Facebook. I'm going to be so obnoxious. I say, I'm back. I know y'all miss me as a fan, and people like, I don't care.
When you had season tickets, too.
I still do.
Yeah, okay.
My dad I'm going to the game. I'm going to the Cowboys game.
Nice.
I'm going to wear nothing.
Yeah.
I'm wearing nothing.
Yeah, nothing's better than Cowboy stuff. So
no, I'm wearing nothing. I'm a boo both of them, and I'm gonna just say like they both terrible, and they're gonna be like I'm a high five people. I don't know, man. I'm just gonna be not Normandy? Switzerland. I'm just gonna be there neutral.
There you go, neutral.
Both teams will get hated on at the same place. All right. Well, this has been a great podcast. As we said at the end. The stage is set. Shout outs and plugs. Shout out, show love to anyone you want to show love to. And then plugs, ways that either you're comfortable with the listeners following up with you or not. And also the things that you want to route them, the resources, because I'll put them in the show notes. So stage is set. Shout outs and plugs.
Well, I have to shout out our innovation team, or I-Team as we lovingly call them, which is the amazing team of over 60 people that I get to work with every day. And we are the innovation team because we do things differently every day for the sake of our students. And so I wouldn't be able to talk to you about all these things were it not for the amazing people that work on that team. And of course, shout out to my amazing mentors who have really walked me through this career. I wouldn't be here doing this work without those moments of pivot where people pushed me in another direction and pushed me to try applying for a different job and pushed me to apply for a doctoral program and all those things. And so those humans are incredibly special to me in my life and are people that have made sure that I can do the amazing things that I get to do every day. So both are really important. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to find me and my work.
Excellent. And Adrienne.
Yeah, I will echo shout out to the student success coaching team at George Mason University, also known as the Dynamic Dynasty. They're just the most incredible team I've had the pleasure of working with, and are extremely dedicated to not just supporting the students, but supporting each other. It's been really cool to be a part of that experience. Shout out to my family. They're always my champions. They're always in my corner. I'm truly lucky to have such an amazing support system. I talk about my mother all the time. I think I've mentioned her 5 times in this podcast. So Stephanie Garner, thank you, love you. And of course my husband Eric, and my new tiny human, my 9-month-old baby Gartner. He's just the happiest, smiliest, most fun baby ever. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. You can also join, if you're interested in the Success Coaching Knowledge Community, at NASPA.org. If you just look up Knowledge Community, Success Coaching is right then there. And then also check out our website, coaching.gmu.edu. That's our student success coaching website. And if any listeners have referrals, right, if you have a student that you might be concerned about that you want a coach to follow up with, we have a referral form on our website, and we respond to that student within 24 hours, likely within like 2, if I'm being honest. But I think those are it.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much for those amazing resources. I'll definitely put those in the show notes. This has been a great podcast. As you can see, I took lots of notes. I learned just as much as the listener. So thank you so much for your time. Positive Philter listeners, this has been a great show. Please share this with your family members or friends. You can leave a voicemail for the podcast at 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. As I said earlier, every episode from here on out is dedicated in memory of my father-in-law, Jeff Kirsch. So if you feel free, please consider donating to the Jeff Kirsch Anti-Hunger Fund. I put the link in the show notes because his work and his legacy will live on through that fund. And so please support that. Give us a like, re-rating, whatever on Apple, Spotify, whatever. That helps elevate the podcast. But thank you so much for listening, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.